Good afternoon, Supermoms. Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Mandy.
We are the founders and creators of Crunchy Supermom. We typically do our hashtag Ask CSM live broadcast in our private group, which I would love to invite you to join. We'll post a link here at the bottom for you to check that out. It's a free group where we answer questions about being productive and natural-minded. So today we're going to run through some of our questions of the week, and we want to offer you something free. It's called our Supermom's Guide to Getting Stuff Done. It's extremely popular and it's extremely helpful. So again, we'll provide a link in the comments to this so you can check it out. But we're going to get on with our questions. Our very first one is on big ag conventional versus big ag organic versus big ag conventional. And I'm going to let Mandy take this question because she is our resident expert on these things. She's organized food buying clubs in at least 2 states, right?
3, yeah, I guess so.
Something. I don't know. Yeah, multiple for multiple years. So yeah, Mandy, tell us about that. What's better? What's worse?
Okay, well, I think first it is a good question because I mean there's so many different not certifications, but labels on things that people see. And I mean, I think sometimes people are paying extra for no reason. I mean, you see cage-free on eggs and you're like, oh, it sounds wonderful. But is it really cage-free? Are you just paying for that on the packaging? And so much of the time you are just paying for that on the packaging. It has to be a certain type of certification, and ideally you'd want it to even be third-party inspected. So it does take a little bit of research to figure out exactly what those labels mean. And we actually have that broken down for our Supermoms in the Supermom solution that we'll be sharing with them soon, so that will help explain it. But just to give like a quick brief summary here, in general, we think that foods can be like good, better, and best. And you can't always get your best either because of where you live or the cost of things. Sometimes it's just not in your budget to get the best. So you want to make sure that you're putting your dollars towards something that is worth it. And the question that we had dealt specifically with meat, so I'm going to address just meat right now. As far as conventional meat versus organic meat, again, don't necessarily look at the labels unless you know that it is certified something and you know that certification actually means something. But beyond that, I would say that organic is, while USD certified organic may not be perfect and not as good as maybe a small local farmer that you could find that you could really trust, it's still, at least you're not getting the antibiotics and hormones that you would be getting in conventional meat. And for me, that's pretty huge. Like I really want to try to stay away from that as much as possible. And also what they're being fed, the grains that they're being fed, that's a big deal in the organic certification too. They're not going to be getting the GMO grains. And I know that, organic's not perfect. They're going to have some the sprays, there's certain things that are allowed that, we don't like, but it's not going to be the GMO grains that have been like modified to take on excessive chemicals sprayed. So it is a healthier grain. It's not perfect, but again, the hormones and the antibiotics and then the better grains, that's what you're going to be paying for. So to me, we do we don't actually purchase ourselves certified organic because we do go with local farms, but I know you have to try to balance that again. How about you, Sarah? What do you guys do?
Yeah, I try to go for GrassFed primarily, and those are hard because sometimes they claim that they're grass-fed, but if you can't confirm it or whatever. I mean, I know. For instance, there's this grass-fed beef that is not certified organic from Brazil. And a lot of people argue, well, that's so far away, and how do they know? Well, it's because Brazil hasn't adopted these big ag, policies and processes that the United States has, or even, what's the other? I don't remember the other country that's I don't want to say China. China does chicken, but just we go for grass-fed first. One, it tastes better, and two, that's just normal. And the other thing is I could get really caught up in worrying about where the cows live and all the toxins that they're exposed to. But I believe that if the cow is eating what it's meant to eat, it will deal with those chemicals more naturally than if it were eating organic soybean products, or whatever feed that they give the cows. I just sort of feel like if they're eating grass the way nature intended them to eat, that's a little bit better than organic feed, even if the grass is sprayed with chemicals, if I have to choose. Right. But obviously I go for grass-fed organic as my number one choice. And thankfully it's becoming more and more affordable. Now chicken and pork and things, those things are not, those seem to be, it's so funny because I guess chicken is more expensive than beef these days, or at least it is for me when I try to get the most affordable and clean items. So, and I tell my husband that all the time because he'll go to the store and he'll just buy something that's organic. And I'll say, look, this has all of these junk ingredients in it. It's not necessarily better. And some of the examples would be like chicken nuggets or whatever, the organic chicken nuggets. It's funny because some of the products are organic, but I don't know that the chicken's organic. I think the top or the breading is organic. I don't really know how to tell. Do you know how to tell? You guys probably never buy that stuff.
I have not bought that in a long, long time, so I'm not sure. But I think you have to be careful. And my most recent example of that is my mom had some sweet potatoes that she had purchased, and they were in a bag, and it said organic on it. And I looked at the bag, and I'm like, this is not organic. You paid for something, and it's not certified organic. So.
Right.
She paid for it to say organic on it. Yeah. No oversight, no nothing. So I think it's so hard to know if you're paying for something that's worth it or not. So it's not easy. Mm-hmm. But again, with the meat, the certifications, and even with the grass-fed, I was going to say, even with the grass-fed, that's not regulated. So you have to check and make sure that either the farm and the farmer and you trust them that it really is grass-fed, or you're going to want to dig a little deeper and see if they have a certification like that's third-party verified for that grass-fed. Because they can say that all they want and nobody's going to do anything to them because it's not regulated. Right. So they can make that claim and it might not be.
Right. And the grass-fed, grass-finished is key because they could say they roam all day, but a majority of their calories are coming from when we pin them up and feed them in a bucket. The thing is, if you get some real grass-fed beef, you know the difference. I mean, you can taste the difference. You can smell the difference. So, yeah.
And other thing I thought about too was that, so with the USDA organic, which again, I'm not saying you should get certified organic meat. There's other options besides just organic, but just to use that as a term. That versus the conventional, they could be feeding them, candy. Did you read that example?
Mm-hmm.
They're being fed candy, or I think they even do distillery grains, the stuff left over from
the barley and hops. Mm-hmm.
So they feed that to the cows. These are they are sick animals, and they're only being kept alive, which sounds horrible, but they're only being kept alive by the antibiotics that they give them, because they did not give them the antibiotics, they probably would not make it. So,
right. Well, and then why does all of that matter? It's if you're a person who's saying, well, I don't care about the humanity of cows, which is fine because sometimes your budget doesn't allow you to care about the humanity of cows. The biggest reason why it matters is the nutritional value. So if you are living on a budget and you're trying to use food to modify your health or just maintain your health, then it does matter because you don't want to eat junky meat that costs you, a lot of money or even just a little money. You just don't want to eat it because it doesn't have enough nutrient value. And in those arguments, sometimes leaning more towards a plant heavy diet is actually healthier for you than eating poor quality meat. So I would rather
with the hormones and the antibiotics, I think that that's kind of how it becomes, because that is so detrimental for your health. It changes things. It changes kids. I mean, their development, hitting puberty and things like that. So yeah.
And the inflammation that it causes in your gut, and they're linking the gut inflammation to brain, which is causing depression and anxiety and mental illness, just all these things. So that's why it matters, but it's not something to freak out about. I lost Mandy, but I'm sure she'll come back. So it's not something to freak out about and just never, I don't know. You can go to the store and find something. Hey, you're back.
Yeah.
You can go to the store and find something to eat that fits your budget. But if I had to prioritize, I would look for chemical-free produce with chemical and modification-free meat. And I would do limited meat, really high-quality eggs, because those go a long way. And that's how I would kind of, mitigate your budget. But yes, I would probably say it's safe not to eat conventional meat if you can, right, Mandy? I mean, that's just one of those things where it's a hard thing to adjust to, but our family does not buy conventional animal products whatsoever.
That's how we are as well. And that was my priority. Animal products was my priority before organic vegetables. And
right.
So yeah, I mean, and when you're looking at the antibiotic problem, and we're talking about it changing our world, because if antibiotics are no longer effective, and a big chunk of that is because of what the animals are being fed, we're talking about going back in time where we don't have access to antibiotics that work. And so lots of people are concerned about that. And again, without the antibiotics, these animals won't be alive. I mean, the chickens alone, they can't live, and that's sad whenever you think the fact that they raise chickens that they grow super fast and unnaturally and everything. And if they can't even live the 6 weeks without these that they live, or something crazy short like that, if they can't live that short of a time without the antibiotics because it's so filthy, then that is a big problem.
Yeah. What are we doing eating this sick, it's just a manufactured animal. I mean, it's almost like Velveeta. I mean, it's just, the chickens are the same as Velveeta. They're manufactured and kept alive, and they're food-like products at that point. So nutrient quality is the biggest reason why those things matter. So it's very complicated. There's no cut and dry answer, but we love talking about it. So if this freaked you out, it shouldn't. This just means don't just go blow your budget on organic labeling. That's not always the best option. And it's not always the even worthy option. So come into our group, ask us questions. We're happy to help you troubleshoot, and we'll do our best to get you the copy of our Supermoms shopping guide, which helps, I guess, what do you call it? Decipher all those labels.
Yeah.
Help prioritize which ones are worth it.
You're spending money on actually something's actually good.
Right.
And of course, if you can find local farmers that you can trust, and you really do trust them, then that can always be, it can even be a more affordable option. Really, it can. So depending on where you live, we always recommend that.
Right. We're going to switch gears to child sleep, which has nothing to do with food. So that'll be a nice change. Yeah. So our question was, I'm looking for any help with getting my kids to go to bed by themselves or without fighting, such as not being scared of the dark and to sleep through the night. So Mandy and our answer to this is, there is no solution. No, just kidding. I mean, there really isn't. There's a lot of things you can try. You're not alone. Mandy and I both have had, I don't know, my first kid was a great sleeper. The last two were terrible. They still kind of are. What do you think, Mandy?
None of mine have been great. Like, we've had short periods of greatness and we're like, wow, it's amazing. But none of mine. But the encouraging thing is I have two older ones now, and they sleep. They go to sleep great. They sleep well. It will end, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah. I don't sweat it now I have 5 kids. So I don't sweat it with my younger ones as much now as I did with my first 2, because I'm like, I'm never going to sleep again. Right. But I realized that's not going to be true. I will sleep again one year, know, but we had a few tricks, and we do now with mostly my 4 and my 6-year-old, because they're the bigger challenges.
Right. And that's, I'm going to post here our podcast on this.
Yeah.
It really talks about you need to reframe your expectations, right? Everyone tells you kids need to sleep, like babies sleep through the night, toddlers sleep through the night. Yes, some of them do. I really think having 3 different personalities in my, like 3 children with completely different personalities, that it's a temperament thing. I really think it's a temperament. Adults do not sleep through the night. They wake up frequently. They have trouble going to sleep and settling. I mean, look at all the medications that they have on the market for getting to sleep. Right. It's the same thing with kids. It's just they look to us for help getting to sleep. We are their over-the-counter medication, right? We're the thing that helps get them to sleep. It's super frustrating, but the biggest thing that I have done to save my sanity is to reframe my expectations. I expect them not to go to bed. I expect them to wake up in the middle of the night. And every time they wake up, starting around age 1.5, I start talking to them about, it's really good for you to stay in your bed as much as you can. If you need mommy and daddy, just come to our room. And the older they get, the more we tell them, you're welcome to jump in our bed, or not jump, but very carefully climb into our bed. Do not wake us unless you need to. If you wake us, we're going to assume that you're really sick or something really bad has happened. But otherwise, if you just need to be close, just crawl into our bed quietly.
Yes. And that was big for us too. And even so we've had it before where there's either a little baby or we seem to have multiple children in there and we can't fit. If you have like a place for a pallet or a bed beside your bed, and just come and lay down there. If you need to be close, just lay down. But yeah, again, trying to get them to not wake you. That was big. And we've had kids we've co-slept, with all of them. And you know how people always say that it's never going to end. And yet it does. And I have 4 older ones now, and the baby's the one that co-sleeps, but none of the other 4, like they're okay. They don't need to co-sleep anymore. I don't know. So it does end.
Yeah. So I have a 9-year-old. She sleeps in her own bed, but she was the type that even as a newborn, I tried to make her co-sleep. Even when she had a cold, she wouldn't. She wanted to be in her own bed. Wow. But then the next 2 are still waking up at age 7 and 4 and getting into my bed. Now, the 7-year-old is actually the worst one. She wakes up the most. So, but she's old enough that we can set those expectations with her. It's like, you will start the night in your bed.
Yes.
You can come to us, but it is very important that you don't wake us, because 9 times out of 10, if she wakes us in the middle of our sleep, we don't handle it very well because we're not coherent. I mean, we don't like freak out on her. Well, kind of. I mean, we just say, what do you want? Like, shh, I'm sleeping. You just kind of freak out. And then in the morning, I always apologize. And I'll say, I'm sorry that I behaved that way, but you woke me up out of a dead sleep. And we've talked to you about how mommy and daddy aren't really awake when we do that. So just crawl in bed, snuggle with us. That's fine. It's a lot easier to snuggle your kid when they don't wake you up, by poking you in the eyeball or yelling or something.
Yelling about something.
Yeah. And the sleep, being afraid of the dark, that's a stage thing. It's a developmentally appropriate thing. And I've actually, in the comments, I posted our podcast that talks about those developmental stages. Around age 2, 4, 6, and 8, just literally on those marks, they start to realize how dangerous the world is. And so separation anxiety takes on different forms, and it really becomes a nighttime problem at age 4. So it's normal. And I think the best thing you can do is make your child feel secure. So they know that you heard them, you validate their fears, because their fears are real, whether there's, we know there's no monsters under the bed, but their fears are real. So it's important to validate, or they're not going to trust you to protect them. And then they won't feel secure in the night because they'll think, oh, well, if I see a monster tonight and I tell mom and dad, they're going to tell me it's not real. Like, I shouldn't be afraid, but they are afraid, and that's okay.
Right. And it goes back to, like you said, the expectations. That was big for me too. Like the whole should. And I'm like, my kid should be sleeping by now. My child should be doing this. I should not be waking up. So letting go of all the shoulds, that was like big for me. If I let that go, it was easier for me. But that being said, there's still things we've done, I think, like to try that work to try to get them to go to sleep. So my older 2, we can give them a time and a clock, and they know when it's time they're allowed to read and just settle themselves and spend time quietly. And as long as they don't, they're not too wild, they're two boys, so they can be wild. But as long as they're not wild and disrupting us, they can stay up till a certain time, and then we, it's their responsibility to go ahead and go to bed. So letting them have that time was a big deal for them and helped so much. And then for my younger ones, we have like our daily routine and pictures for them, so they know what happens when. And so at night, part of their routine as they're supposed to go to bed, we do the whole nighttime routine of everything. They get read to and put to bed and kiss and everything, but they know that they're supposed to be quiet and calm down and go to sleep, because then the next day it starts our whole new, routine for the morning. And as part of that, they get to have their little educational computer thing, and they look forward to that, even if it's only a few minutes. And so if they don't go to sleep nicely, then we don't have the next phase in the morning. Usually I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry, we have to do this because you didn't go to sleep nicely last night. And so that's been a big like thing to help them want to calm down at night.
Right. Yeah. For my 4-year-old, she gets to earn between 0 and 4 books at night. And so she'll say, how did I do? Do I get 4? And I'll say, well, you only get 2 tonight. And then I will say, what could you have done differently to earn 4 books? And she'll say, I could have brushed my teeth when you said brush my teeth, And a year ago, it was always a fight. I would still read her a book because she was so little, but basically she never earned her books. I was always just conceding, but just telling her, you get 4 books if you get ready for bed and do everything on time, versus running around and playing. And so then that's a natural consequence for her: more time with mom or less time.
Right. Exactly.
So, and if I were to recommend a book, one of my favorites would be that, the No Cry Sleep Solution. Did you ever end up reading that one?
Yeah, I did. I really like that one. It was supportive and nice. And I think I used a few of the tips and tricks in there. But it was my first one. So it was pretty much I did whatever he wanted for a long time. But then I started using some of the tricks. Yeah.
Right. I like that it's not a step-by-step. It's more of here's a bunch of different positive ways to encourage sleep, and not the crying it out or, any of those things, or just saying like, you must do this 57-point process every night, to get your kid to sleep. It was never like that. It was just very, try this thing and give it, 10 days or 2 weeks worth of things. So we just had a question or a comment. I just started setting a timer for my daughter to get ready for bed. Otherwise, she just talks and sings to herself forever. That's a great idea. They actually have those clocks that they turn blue or something for nighttime and orange. And this just kind of popped up. So how do you feel about Aldi's? Never any antibiotics or hormones. Have you looked at Aldi's before?
Not really. I haven't, because it was, where we lived before we recently moved, it was a bit of a drive. So I didn't really shop there. So I never really looked into it too much.
Yeah, I haven't lived by one. It's hard. I'd like to research them more. I would honestly say though, if it has some kind of farm, like a label of where they're getting the meat and stuff, you can call around and you can dig into it. I know like Weston A. Price Foundation, there's usually a resource for looking up specific farms, or you could contact someone, right, Mandy? Is that still what they do?
You will look on their website and you can find where your state is, and then look in your county or city or whatever and find a Weston Price chapter leader. Usually they're supposed to have a resource guide for you, so they can just email it to you and give you like local farmers. And I know sometimes people think, oh, it's so much more expensive, but you don't really know unless you've checked for sure, because there are sometimes that you can find higher quality local, just take eggs, for example. And while they might not be perfect, the most pristine eggs ever, they're still going to be better than what you might be getting in the store and paying for,
Yep.
And cheaper too. So I say definitely give it a shot and try.
Yeah. And if you want to post some of the names of the farms, I do have like an app that kind of helps. It's the one by the Weston A. Price Foundation, or I don't know that it's by them. It's that food buying something app. I forget what they named it. It's pretty decent for researching the farms, because if there is a chapter leader that's been able to do research, they kind of provide it to the app. It's not the best, but it's a start.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to Think Dirty, but those are also, politicized. So let's see, our next one was safe deodorant. Do you do it yourself or do you buy it? So I buy mine from Mandy, and then I recently did a trial on Native and Schmidt's. And I know both of those don't meet your criteria, right, Mandy, for pristine? Because one of them has zinc oxide or titanium. What is it?
I don't know. I like zinc oxide. I'm not afraid. I use it in mine, but that's one of the big things. I think if you were gonna do it yourself, I say add that to your deodorant because I just it's so effective. But I'm not afraid of the non-nano. I'm like, it sits on your skin. It's so big that it's not going to sink. You don't have to be afraid of it. I'm not sure about the nano, but I avoid it just in case at this point. So I'm not afraid of zinc oxide, but I think one of those had fragrance, and that's why I didn't.
Yeah. Right. So definitely they all have fragrance, like Native and all those things. I don't
oils like they.
They're essential oils. So I personally like your deodorant better for myself, but my husband likes the Native citrus and musk, and it smells like his Old Spice, but it doesn't have all the chemicals. So I feel like it's definitely good. I mean, it's definitely safe, and it's better than almost all the other options out there except for yours. And making it yourself, what do you think about that? Do you recommend that for people? Is it affordable or worthwhile?
I think it can be. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, and you can make it as simply as taking some coconut oil and baking soda if you don't react to baking soda. If you do, it changes the pH of it, and the pH of our skin is slightly acidic, and then you're throwing in something very basic like baking soda, and so that's really the irritation. A lot of it with baking soda, I think. So you have to be careful because it can get irritating. But you could just put a few simple ingredients together, and I say include the zinc oxide because it really cuts the stink. To put it nicely, like not to put it nicely, but to say it, bluntly, like it does. It works really well. And there's a few other ingredients too. Like I use castor oil. I use organic castor oil, and it really helps too. So, but I think one of the biggest ones was the zinc oxide that changed it for me, because baking soda did not work. None of the baking soda deodorants worked at all for me. I mean, like, it was bad. I tried all the natural ones, and so that's what I started trying to figure out how to make my own, because they just didn't work. So
and yours it's smoother to go on. It's creamier, and I like the new container. That was really nice. I have used Oyen Handmade. It's called Funk Butter. And have you ever looked at the ingredients? I know that I told you years ago I bought it.
I have, but it's been a long time, so I can't remember now.
I don't think it's not as natural as yours, but it is made, it's pretty solid. I mean, that stuff, I don't ever smell bad, but it's so chunky. I mean, you just kind of put chunks under your armpits. I think only cornstarch would be more noticeable than that, because a lot of people use cornstarch for deodorant. I don't, but
wow. That would never work for me either. Like I don't know. I sweat a ton. Like I'm just like gross. So
yeah, I do down here. But there's definitely good recipes for making your own deodorant. I don't know that you've shared one, Mandy, but we could maybe consider that.
Yeah.
Your body butter recipe is in our members area, which is one of my favorites. I make that for gifts for everyone. The secret's out. I guess that's where it came from. But yeah, it is important. And the other thing is, you do not want to use an antiperspirant, because blocking the perspiration in your armpits is counterintuitive, because it's toxins leaving your body. I don't know why you would do that. And your armpits, aren't they the second most secretive? How do you use that word? Like they secrete the most toxins. I don't remember what the first organ is, but I could only guess that.
But even just sweating in general, I mean, any kind of sweating, I mean, you look at it, you're like, I mean, it's huge, like what it does as far as detox. So any kind of sweating, well, it's not pleasant, or I really don't like to sweat, but yeah, it's good for you. So to stop it is bad. Plus all of the things that and conventional deodorant that's in there that stops you from the sweating, gets absorbed into your body. And so we're talking massive aluminum, because you're applying this at least once a day. So it's quite a bit that gets into your body.
And my favorite thing that I keep, especially here in Louisiana, I have a sticky suction hook on my mirror in my bathroom, and I have one of those Norwex antimicrobial. I think they have the silver in them, right? The silver.
Oh, yeah.
So I keep one of those body rags hanging up, and I'll wet it, and I'll wash my armpits a couple times of the day, and between my décolletage or whatever you want to call it, and all those little areas that get nasty, because it does cut the bacteria. I don't know if people realize that the reason you smell bad is actually the sweat activating bacteria on your body. Yeah, right. It's not, there are things that you can eat or do that makes your sweat stink, but I personally notice that I don't smell when I sweat. It's my clothes that smell because the bacteria that gets into your armpit area, especially. Right. So washing with the silver enhanced cloths kind of helps. Now, what do you think about using those? Are you a fan or not really?
I haven't really looked into them that much, but it's interesting. They are really interesting to see because silver is naturally, a natural antibiotic. So yeah, that's pretty neat. I don't use it on my face, the silver type cloths, and anywhere else. Just those areas where I want to protect my clothes. So because we don't use chemicals, so then your clothes will smell like your nasty BO that bakes in there with all the bacteria. So, and that's the other thing is your detergent on Green Earth Naturals is one of the few things that will kill the smell in the synthetic clothes that my husband wears for working out. It's like the only detergent. He's tried everything from the Tide Sport and this really terrible, I don't remember what it was, but it smelled so strong that I had to open all the windows in the house. It was like a sport. It is supposed to kill the bacteria and those fake synthetic fibers didn't help. Did not help. Your stuff knocked it out in 2 washes. So wow, that's
pretty cool. He was impressed.
That's awesome. Yay!
You need to sell it to the military so they can defunk that place.
Right.
So, well, I think those were the questions for the week.
We have one more.
Methanol. Oh yeah, I'll let you take that one.
Okay, so as far as methanol in our foods and being concerned about the amount we're getting, I personally, it's not something that's really on my radar because I think the primary way that you would ingest that and it'd be dangerous for your body is through diet sodas or any kind of aspartame. Is that how you say it? Aspartame? Yes.
Yeah. But aspartame, I don't know.
Yeah. But that's, I think that's one of the biggest ways that you would, become taken so much that it's really toxic. The other way is through canned and jarred vegetables and fruits. And I guess smoked meats and fish as well. But none of those, we try to stay away from those things, and juice too. That includes juice. So we try to stay away from cans and jars and also the smoked meats. So the only place I really get it is the tomatoes because I can't really function without jarred tomatoes. But the way to mitigate that supposedly is by simmering the tomato sauce for, I think, 3+ hours with the lid cracked. So I will try to do that. But I feel like that's one of the only places that we get it. I mean, there's probably some in, some of the other things like well-ripened fruit, I think, can still have some, but I don't know. We try to stay away from canned or jarred things as much as we can.
Right. We're big, the jovial the jarred tomatoes. We do those. But I've recently switched to just getting a bunch of frozen vegetables because those are definitely better, right? I mean, wouldn't you say that that's better than canned?
Yeah, to me, I think is a step above canned. Yes.
Yeah.
Vegetables.
Yeah. And I never did that. Yeah. I never did that till we moved down here because stuff just dies so quickly. So things like green beans and green beans and snap peas and mushrooms. I can't get organic mushrooms, but I can get frozen ones, which I never thought of eating frozen mushrooms, but because those are one of the few sources of vitamin D.
Right.
So we try to eat a lot of mushrooms, and the frozen ones are better. But yeah.
And I've heard like Western price recommendations, the whole good, better, best type thing, I think is like dehydrated stuff or freeze dried.
Oh.
That can be hard and expensive though to get.
Oh gosh,
so
yeah.
whenever we lived somewhere where I couldn't get them, I'm all excited because I can get mushrooms now. I'm like, whoa, or, you know, like, but where we used to live, yeah, it was kind of the same. I'm like, I just can't get as much stuff. So we ate more frozen now than we do now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. And some of these things too, it all goes back to packaged food. Even if it's organic, a lot of that organic juice is still juice. It still has stuff. You know, there's preservative. They have to put something in it to preserve it. And if they don't, it's probably extremely expensive, like $7 or $8 or more dollars per jar, which is just not, you know, it's one of those things. If you've introduced your kids to it, they get used to having it. So then what do? Well, honestly, we use kombucha. So whenever we have friends over and they want something that's not water, we'll serve kombucha.
Right.
Homemade, so it's not so expensive. But just the canned and prepared and the jarred foods, it seems convenient. And some people think it's, you know, more affordable. But in essence, it's really not, because it's not as nutritional. It sets up different habits. You know, if you get used to the taste of canned soup, then you're never going to like homemade soup, because it definitely doesn't have as much sodium, you know, that strong sodium taste to it. So things like that.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, I think that was the last one, right?
Good. Yeah, I think so. I think that was the last question I have written down.
Awesome. Well, thanks for hanging in with us. If you have any other questions, #AskCSM. You can do that on social media, or you can jump in our community group. We really like to get in there and chat with people, get to know you, find out what we can do to help. I think I posted a bunch of links. I don't see them myself, but I typed them into the box. If not, I'll come back and add them. Yeah, so it was good talking with you, Mandy.
You too. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone.